There we go. All right. What's up, everyone? Good afternoon, and welcome to a very special edition of Shaw Local's Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors, along once again with Sean Hammond, and really something I've been waiting months to say with us once again is Hub Arkush. Hub, everyone's been, every week that we've done this podcast, there wasn't a single week where we didn't get questions or people just offering their thoughts and prayers for you. And everyone extremely excited to have you back. But, just tell us what it's been like getting back to work here.
Well, we're just getting started. We're starting slow. I've got a ways to go with getting permission from the therapists and the doctors to really go full speed and go completely back to normal. But, I think the only thing, my thoughts for the moment is I've had a few opportunities, and this is the best one I've had so far, to try and say thank you to everybody. People have just been so kind and concerned, and it's been a little surprising to me that many people care, but it is, incredibly appreciated, and I'm doing well. It's been really interesting, to be honest, guys. I don't know if any of our friends here or listeners have thought about this or are aware of it, but the last week and a half or so with what happened with the Bills game and, that young man basically, I don't know if people realize this or not, but the Bills team doctor, who was, deeply involved in his, care and treatment, although not in charge at that point when it happened because they were, with the other team doctors there. But he is a former team doctor of the Bears and somebody who I used to know fairly well. And it's been interesting to learn a little bit about what went on. And while the causation of what happened to him was obviously very different, what happened to him and me was exactly the same thing. Rather than getting hit on the football field, I collapsed in the parking lot of Alice Hall. But from that point on, the treatment that we received and the things that we went through are identical, and even it's been somewhat surprising to me to learn that apparently I was even in a little worse shape than he was, just as far as surviving it and making it. But it's 5 months later now, and it's been an interesting road, but I feel good. And there's what happens with something like this is there is a lot of mental damage. There's a lot of memory loss. There's a lot of things that have to be rehabbed and rebuilt. And some of it comes back 100%. Some of it never makes it all the way back. I'm well ahead of speed and target right now and hopeful that it's going to be 100%. And what's been interesting and weird about it is that some stuff there was no damage, and there was no damage to the football part. I don't know how that works. I'm sure, a lot of our readers and listeners probably think I never knew anything, but whatever I am credited with knowing, that part never went away. That's still there. That's still very normal. It's been really fun and interesting these last 5 or 6 weeks to start to get back to it and relearn what I know about this group and this team and where they're at right now. And hopefully that's what we're here to talk about tonight, and all we'll really have to talk about going forward.
Yeah.
John, I just want to say welcome back. I know you and I have gotten to talk a couple times over the last couple of weeks, but I just wanted to add, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners feel the same way, that this show, our podcast and the live stream, we've really missed you. It hasn't been the same the last 5 months, and Kyle and I have soldiered on and done our best, but it's great to hear your voice on here.
Guys, it's just great to be back with you. Fortunately, we've had a chance to visit and talk a little bit the last couple of weeks. One of the things I'll apologize for right now, I don't know if people remember this from when we used to do this, my dogs are pretty well behaved. Right now, one of them is trying to eat my right arm. So I may have to throw them out of the room before we're done, but we'll see if we can get by without them. And it's just, everything about, as I tried to say at the top, and I don't think I finished, just want to thank people so much for how kind they've been. And also everybody at Shaw Media and everybody with the Chicago Bears, the way that people have gone out of their way for me and my family. And it's, it's just good to be back and getting back to normal. And I think that probably what everybody would enjoy the most is we do nothing but try and talk football going forward, because there's going to be a lot of football to talk about these Chicago Bears.
There certainly is. And Sean, Hub and I were on this morning just kind of going through stuff and trying to get set up for this afternoon. And really for the first time since, Hub's return that I've talked with him, we got into a football talk at the end, and it was fun because I've really missed it. And what happened, I was telling you a little earlier, Sean, that it was an instance where we kept going, one more thing, and then I got to go. And it was 15 minutes later, and we were still talking football. And it was great to do. I know everyone that's here has been waiting to do that with Hub. And Sean, you were at Hallis Hall today for the end of season press conference with Ryan Poles, and walk us through what you heard and what your takeaway was with that.
Yeah, so Ryan Poles spoke for maybe about 30 minutes. Kind of the usual end of season press conference, and wide ranging bunch of different topics. I would say like the big takeaways for me, he spent a lot of time talking about how he was setting the foundation this year, and I think that I think Ryan Poles, for maybe the first time all year, kind of acknowledged that he knew this was going to be a difficult season. He said that he came in early in the season, and he gave everybody this blue Bears colored Lego piece and said, we're setting the foundation. This is the first brick, so to speak. And he kind of talked about the building the foundation from that. And I think that we've all seen that happen throughout the year. Matt Eberflus has talked about that a lot. But then more specifically, a big thing about this season was answering the questions at quarterback and trying to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of your young quarterback. And I think the Bears have largely done that. They know what he's capable of. They know what Justin Fields' strengths and weaknesses are. He obviously is a really good runner. And Poles wasn't shy in saying that he's got to work on things game. And he can still continue to improve on his game. And obviously there was a lot of questions about the number 1 overall draft pick. That's going to be a huge talking point over the next 3 months. I thought Poles, pretty much walked the line and didn't, commit one way or the other to either, his quarterback or he's going to do his due diligence and look at these quarterbacks in the draft. But at the same time, he knows the guy that he's got on the roster already. And, I don't expect that they're going to be the phrase he used, he'd have to be blown away by a rookie quarterback in this draft if they were going to make such a momentous move like that with Justin Fields on the roster. And I mean, that's kind of what I would expect him to. Other notes or tidbits. I mean, he basically gave Chase Claypool a pass for the way that the end of the season went. With injuries and obviously it was not a good last couple of weeks there for Claypool once he became a Chicago Bear. Interestingly, he didn't really commit to anybody on the O-line, although he did say he was impressed by Tevin Jenkins moving over to that right guard spot. And one other note, as we've kind of been saying, Kyle, he's not going to spend all this free agent money in one off season. It's stupid money. He has so much money at his fingertips and I don't know that you could expect him to spend all that in one free agent class. But the expectation is to get this football team better. And I think that's what everybody wants.
So, Hub, I'm going to pull this comment up from Gary Ross and kind of lead into a question based off of this. Ryan Poles sounded very even toned today, but the overall thought was that they have a lot to play with. And in that terms, Sean was talking about, I was happy today with Ryan Poles basically specifically saying, I would have to be completely blown away, because as we were talking about earlier, what we were talking about and, what the topic over the next couple of months is going to be a lot about is Justin Fields and his development this season. And it was kind of funny because I think we ended up we were on the same page, but coming at it from different angles. And, I'm going to let you at this point. People have been asking for Hub's opinion on Justin Fields for months. We got a full season under our belt. So I'll let you take it away. Start unpacking this for us.
Well, I think it's probably important to go back to the start and understand that it was a given that this team needed to be rebuilt. That maybe things could have gone better than they did this year, but it was never going to go well. They weren't going to win a Super Bowl. They almost certainly weren't going to the playoffs. And they've got a situation where they have. I'm not sure I remember a team with $123 million worth of cap space. And I've been doing this for 45 years now, and the Bears have never had the first pick in the draft. 1947 was the last time they had the first pick in the draft. And by the way, I have to report, unfortunately, that pick turned out to last 1 year. 1947 was a very different time. And so, this is all new turf for them. And that you look at the teams that are in the playoffs right now, and you'll find that 3 or 4 of them were in the exact same shape the Bears are in now as recently as 2-3 years ago. And they've done it well. There are also other teams that were in that shape that have not done it well and are still bad. And I think what it's important for Bears fans to understand is what this situation really is. As much as the Bears wanted to have high draft picks, wanted to have a lot of cap space, they didn't go to a single game this season planning or hoping to lose. They didn't bring in a single player that they didn't think could be good. They worked with what they had to try and find what they could to get started. And anybody on this roster as of the end of the day Sunday who is part of the future, that's a good thing. But they're not counting on a whole bunch, and I think the real frustration now, with the quarterback trade is that he ended up costing the 33rd pick in the draft. And you can't be real happy about that right now. But you also have to remember that he was a second round pick a couple of years ago, and forget where in the second round, that he is still a talent, and maybe he can be part of the answer. There are some other players, but it right now primarily goes to Justin Fields, because until you got the quarterback, you don't have everything fixed, and I think I understand why some fans are as excited as they are about Justin Fields. It's because he's a special athlete at 6'3", 235 pounds. He is, if not the best, one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL, and he has the arm strength and the arm talent to become a great quarterback. What he's not yet is a good quarterback. What he is not yet is an NFL passer. And the entire NFL history is built of players like Justin Fields, who all were paid tremendous prices for and drafted to be the franchise quarterback. And 95, 98% of them don't evolve. That's just the way it works, And I think that you have to feel positive about the tools that Justin Fields has. You have to feel positive about his evolution as a runner this year. I am concerned about his passing. He's not an NFL passer yet. You have to be, not paying attention to not know that the Bears had one of the worst passing games in the NFL. And you know what? I don't think these running backs are as bad as people are painting them to be. I don't think they're good. I don't think they have enough. I don't think anybody would be upset if the first pick overall in the draft was I think I said running backs. I meant receivers. And there's a couple kids who are going to be top 10 picks, And so what everybody needs to understand right now is that the next 6 months is all and more about continuing to develop Justin Fields. It is about getting another quarterback option. I don't see any circumstances under which it's the first pick in the draft, because I don't see yet a quarterback that's going to be in this draft that's going to be worth the first overall pick, whether it's the Bears or anybody else. But they do need to get another NFL option at quarterback. And you can do that through free agency with all the money you have to spend. You can do it by trading that first round pick or by taking a quarterback in the second, third, or fourth round. There's a lot of ways to do it, but they have to remain committed to Justin Fields and doing everything they can to develop him. And they also have to be committed to finding another option to compete with him. And I'm reasonably confident that that's where they're at. They have to decide whether the defensive line or the wide receivers or the offensive line are their greatest need. I think there's a very good chance that the best player in the draft this year will be a pass rusher, will be a defensive lineman. There's a few good ones out there. There's a couple of great, receivers out there. So there's a lot to unpack here. And today is day 2. It's just too early to know what is next. But the one thing I think it's critical for Bears fans to understand is that right now, Justin Fields is one of the, I don't want to say most overrated, but I will say more overrated players in the NFL as a franchise quarterback. He's nowhere near there yet. I think we've seen enough talent to be hopeful that it could happen, and it could happen as soon as the 23 season, but it's not likely to. It's probably going to take a little more than that. And that's just football reality. That's not negativity or positivity about the Bears or Justin Fields. That's about understanding the work that they have to do, and that what they're looking at is at least a 2-year job. And let's hope they get as much out of it from in the first year as they can.
There's a lot there, Sean.
Well, Hub, why? Let me ask you this: why do you think the Bears need to bring in another quarterback to contend with Justin? And
well, I would say maybe not contend.
Develop, I think, would be the word.
Are you advocating for somebody to challenge him for that job, or are you advocating for a third or fourth round pick who could maybe eventually challenge him for that job?
I think if the Bears are going to be the team that their fans and everybody wants them to be, they need players at every position on the field to challenge everybody else for jobs. And I think what you have to understand about Justin in particular and the quarterbacks is that there's a reason that a running quarterback has never won a Super Bowl. And there's a few reasons, but one of the main reasons is that it's dangerous. And the reality of where Justin Fields is at right now is that he has been the Bears starting quarterback basically for 26 or 27 games and has only started 21 of them. He's missed 6 games due to injury. And it's one of the main reasons that running quarterbacks in the NFL struggle. And you've got to be aware of that. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not saying it's a reason that he can't become the first one to win a Super Bowl. He can. He has shown some real ability. But you can't ignore anything right now. You've got to be knowledgeable enough in the realities of the NFL to know that that's a concern. And so I think the most likely scenario is that they end up signing at least one veteran who's going to be better than what they've had so far at number 2 and number 3. I think that, where we're at right now is we're going to learn more about who these top draft choices are. But if there are 2 or 3 or 4 options at number 1, then I think the best thing the Bears can do is trade that number 1 pick and get a couple more number 1s, And I think there's something else that Bears fans need to understand. Justin Fields has already cost you not 1, but 2 number 1 draft choices. You don't want to do that again. You can't afford to do that again. You don't rebuild the roster by doing that again. So they have to, not only take advantage of the assets they have, but create some more and just give Justin every chance they can for him to become the player that we hope he can be. But you also have to accept the reality that he's not there yet. He's really not close yet. And that if you look at the history of the league, 90+% of these guys don't make it, and I don't know what's going to happen with Justin Fields. I hope he does. Everything I've seen about him, he's a good kid. He's a good young man. And he's got a lot of the tools that you want. And so you commit to developing him, but you also give yourself a backup plan. And I think that's at least one part of what they've got to be doing, over the next 12 months and over the next couple months as they decide what to do with all these assets that they have.
Auger, I saw you posting there about Echo a little bit. That's actually Hubs, and we were trying to find some headphones for him. What I'm going to do here, just so you know, I can hit mute on my end for your mic when I'm talking, so it doesn't echo. I just have to make sure to hit unmute before you start talking. If you look at the bottom of your screen, actually, you can hit unmute yourself if you want to just jump in if I'm in the middle of something. Yeah, Sean. So that's Hub and I were talking about earlier we were talking about there tends to be two camps right now when talking about Justin Fields. You have people that have completely, I shouldn't say not just two camps, but the two largest camps. You have people that have bought in, right, that are like, yeah, he's the real deal. Like this is for sure a thing. He's going to be the franchise quarterback. And then there's another group of people that are being really loud right now about, you really, really, really have to consider a quarterback. And both of those things to me are a bit annoying because, as Hub was saying, like, there's a gray zone we're in with Justin Fields right now. Like, there is enough to feel really confident that he can be that franchise quarterback, but there's no way to know for sure at this point whether that's going to ever click or not.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that there can be a middle ground in that. It doesn't have to be one or the other at this point where he is right now through 2 seasons in the NFL, halfway through his rookie deal. I mean, I don't see what the harm would be in building around him, getting some more assets at receiver on the offensive line and giving him another year to sort of prove it. We've kind of chalked this year up over the weeks and months as he doesn't have enough help. There's not enough wide receivers, especially once Mooney went down with the injury. Well, the best way to really know, and you've seen this with other places around the league. You've seen this with the Eagles and what they did with Jalen Hurts, and to some extent too with the Dolphins and Tua, and I
would say with Josh Allen, with them going out
with
and getting
Josh Allen and going and
getting
Stephon Diggs. Yeah, sure. That's another good example. Surrounding these young quarterbacks with the tools they need to potentially, to potentially succeed in their job, and give them the chance. And I think that's what that's what the Bears are going to do with Justin Fields. But they're also, you cannot rule out the possibility that they are absolutely are going to do their due diligence and look at these quarterbacks in the draft. There's only so many opportunities to pick number 1 overall. So certainly while potentially trading down is one way to create some flexibility. I think Ryan Poles used that word a bunch of times today, flexibility. Trading down is one option, but they're going to look at other options here.
Hub, so we've brought up a couple quarterbacks now, and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I know earlier this morning I had brought up Lamar Jackson with you, and those are 3 guys where you've seen their development in the passing game. All 3 of them are far from perfect players. Would you 1, 2, 3, all of them, none of them, at where they are in their development, do you consider them franchise quarterbacks?
And by the way, guys, first I want to apologize. The problem you're hearing is my fault. I spent 20 minutes before we went on the air looking for my headset, which is what's causing this, and couldn't find it. So we'll have this fixed by next week. The answer, Kyle, honestly, is no. You don't become a franchise quarterback until you win a Super Bowl. Or until you go to Super Bowls, 2, 3, 4 times, until you lead the league in passing, and until you do a lot of things that none of these young quarterbacks have done yet. One of them is going to lead the league in passing this year. Okay, that's fine. But it's a process. It's not something that happens in one season. When was the last time the rookie of the year was a quarterback? It doesn't work that way in the National Football League. And I think, people need to understand that. And, with Justin, let me ask all of our listeners a question. The last 5 weeks of the season, was he still going forward, or did he start going backward? And the answer is he started going backward a little bit. And part of it's because he was playing hurt. And part of it's because he didn't have enough talent around him. But part of it is he was playing hurt because of all the running he was doing. These are all things that need to be evaluated. And these are things that are being evaluated right now, by the Bears folks, and that they're going to be working on over the next couple of months. The other thing that is key to what we're talking about here, and guys, this isn't me trying to be cool or smart, it's just the facts. I mentioned 45 years of doing this and running Pro Football Weekly, basically for 38, 39 years before we, brought it over to Shaw Media. 40 years ago, we invented independent draft analysis. And for probably 15, 20 years, we were the only place you could go to get meaningful information on players coming out in the draft. And my way back and what we're working on now is where we're already starting to put that back together. And we have to get that information for you. And we will have the best information available for you right here, both at the live stream and through the papers and websites and whatever. And we're not there yet. Okay. There's going to be 4 quarterbacks that I've identified that I'm pretty sure are going to go in the first round. But I would be surprised if any one of them went higher than 3, 4, or 5, unless somebody wants to overpay based on what we've seen so far. But there's a lot more work to do. It looks to me like 2 of the strongest positions in this draft, and again, this is at the beginning, as we start to do our homework, are going to be defensive linemen and receivers. And those are 2 of the Bears' greatest needs, and so they've got to have final grades on those prospects before we know what they're going to be drafting and what they're going to be doing. Kyle mentioned something right off the top about the meeting today, and basically them saying that they're not going to spend all their money. Well, of course they're not going to spend all their money. It's hard to spend $123 million unless you want to really, make some bad deals. But they're going to spend a fair amount of it, and how much of this is going to come from quality veterans? How much of it is going to come from other young players that they think other teams have missed on so far? We just don't know that yet. And that is the process that is it hasn't even started yet. It's beginning right now. It's the work we're going to be doing for you over the next 2 or 3 months as, first free agency starts and then we get to the draft. And we're going to have the best information available for you. I can promise you that because we invented it, 45 years ago. But until we get there, until we know who these players are, the Bears shouldn't be making any decisions. What I will say about quarterback is 2 things. Justin Fields has shown enough for there to be hope that he can become a franchise quarterback. He's also shown enough for us to know that he's not even close to it yet, and you got to be careful. That's number 1. Number 2 is they have to get another quarterback. They have to have an option. They have to have some competition, and whether they do that via free agency, via the draft, or both, we don't know, and so I think they're going to do everything they can to develop Justin Fields. But I also think they're going to be a lot more careful about who number 2 is and hope that they have somebody who's number 2 who can compete with number 1. Because right now Fields is number 1. And as we get to the end of February and the end of draft camp and then, they start signing free agents, then we'll start to have a better picture of how they really feel about where they're at quarterback right now.
Ooh, there's a lot again. Let's see, Sean, you got anything there?
Yeah, here's my thought with regards to, Hub, I'm with you in the fact that we have 3 months to study the draft. We have 3 months here to study these quarterbacks. And I'll be honest, I haven't done enough work yet on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and all those guys. But my thoughts as far as quarterbacks at the top of the draft are, number 1, we always see, there's always going to be somebody who's willing to overpay for a quarterback. And last year was the outlier when we had 5 straight defensive guys on those top 5 picks. I think it was something like that. That was the outlier. I think the fact that Houston, a very quarterback needy team, is sitting at number 2 is going to potentially, drive up the demand for that Bears pick at number 1. And I feel like that's why this number 1 pick is so valuable if the Bears want to trade back, because you got a team that needs a quarterback sitting at number 2. And if anybody has, strong conviction about one of these guys and wants to knows that, whether, let's say it's Bryce Young, that's our guy. We want to get this guy, they're gonna want to jump over Houston to try to get that number one pick and to get their guy, because that's the only way to ensure that you have your guy. So I think it does open up a lot of possibilities. Now, should those quarterbacks be going 1, 2, 3? I don't know. I need to study it more, but I do think that there is going to be demand for that spot for the Bears.
Hub, there was, you look at the landscape of the league, and I think it's pretty easy to come up with 8, 10, maybe even 12 teams that will at least consider a quarterback, whether that's in the draft or via free agency or via trade. And the number to me seems higher than in most years. There's always a carousel, but it really does seem pronounced this year. Do you think that has a chance to really help the Bears, considering the position they're in?
Oh, there's no question about it. Guys, there's another fascinating piece of this. I'm sure, some of our partners here are aware of it, but I'm sure a lot of them aren't. Is Bryce Young is one of the 4 names. Bryce Young is Justin Fields' replacement at Ohio State, and I think that, I know from talking to him that most of the experts who I know and trust will tell you that Bryce Young has been a better passer at Ohio State than Justin Fields was, and that doesn't make him a higher draft pick. That doesn't make him a better NFL prospect, but that's kind of the reality of where they're coming from right now. I don't think that the Bears would use the number 1 overall pick on Bryce Young. I don't think they should use the number 1 overall pick on Bryce Young. But it's just kind of a fun aspect here. What is more important in reaction to what you just asked or mentioned is that there are, and again, I'm trying to be careful here because we're just getting started now, and I don't want to give you the wrong name with the wrong player. So we're talking more about players, kids that we know and have already looked at, but until we learn more about them, I do want to be careful. There are 3 wide receivers and 2 pass rushers that I know of right now are being considered by some teams as possibly being worth the number 1 overall pick. And that's just at those 2 positions that happen to be at the Bears' greatest need. There is a very good chance that the first quarterback taken this year won't go. He could go number 1, could go number 5, 6, or 7. That all works to the Bears' advantage because it creates a lot of teams possibly looking at somebody. If you get a future Hall of Fame pass rusher at number 1, you're just as happy as if you get your franchise quarterback. And there's teams willing to pay the price for that guy. So we've got to let everybody start to do their homework and do their scheduling and their studying and figuring out who these players are. And then every week we're going to start to have more informed and more intelligent conversation about this.
There are 2 things on Justin Fields that are still on my mind that I want to hit. One is not really Fields, it's more about the backup thing we were talking about earlier, and I want to get to that. But first, Hub, you talk about the need of development for Justin Fields as a passer still, and you are right. So he did regress. I feel is a strong word, but there was certainly maybe a plateau at least. And I do wonder, the loss of Darnell Mooney, Tevin Jenkins, that offensive line was in really bad shape. The loss of him at the end of the season. I wonder that, obviously Justin Fields was playing hurt. One thing we talked about it, Sean, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, that still during those last 5 games, that gave me confidence in Justin's development as a starter, Hub, there was a play we talked about, as I said, Sean, where they were in the red zone, and instead of pulling the ball down and running or forcing it to the back line of the end zone, you saw Justin make his reads, adjust his arm angle. He dropped his arm down to get under a linebacker and was able to hit David Montgomery in the flat, who turned it upfield in for the touchdown. And a year ago, even, early this season, I didn't feel like we were seeing that from Justin Fields. So despite some of those inconsistencies over the last 5 games, I felt like there were signs that he was starting to recognize coverages and make better decisions. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Where do you stand on that?
I think he got better as the season went on, and I won't back off from saying he seemed to be going in the wrong direction the last 4 or 5 games, but I still think at the end of the season, he got better, having played the season and been the starter for this season than he was when the season began. And it's just that there's more work to do, but at the end of the game, guys, he was the starting quarterback and he was 3-13. And yes, that is the wide receiver's fault. Yes, that is the offensive line's fault. Yes, that is the defensive line's fault. But more than anybody, it's the quarterback's fault. I mean, that's the way the game is played at this level. And it's not that he was doing things wrong. It's that he didn't do enough right for them to get better. And that's how he is going to be evaluated and measured. And that's what I'm sure they're going to work on this week. Maybe they'll give him a week off. I don't know. They better get him healthy, obviously. But we just don't know yet. I know everybody wants answers, and the only honest answer I can give you is nobody knows yet. But I think very much to Kyle's point is he did get better this year. There's no question about that, and there is a real value to his ability as a running quarterback, and he did that about as well as anybody we've ever seen. So these are things to feel good about, but now we got to be Ryan Poles. We got to be Matt Eberflus because they're trying to save their jobs. Not that they're in trouble now, but one more 3-13 year and they'll be in big trouble. And so they've got to get this right, and they've got to. They're not going to get everything right, but they've got to get a lot of things right. And what they're faced with doing is teaching and developing Justin Fields and hoping that Fields gets that right while they're trying to get it right with all the other pieces that they have to add for him. And I think that it's really been unfair to some of these offensive and defensive linemen and receivers to blame to basically try and explain the shortcomings of the offense and quarterback on them, just like it's unfair to blame it all on Justin Fields. It's the youngest team in the NFL, 16 rookies. This is what you get with that, guys. And so the important question is, how many become great NFL players? How many become good NFL players? How many become starting NFL players? And I think we can all enjoy it. I think we're all going to have a lot of fun with it. But if anybody wants final answers or final results, we haven't got them for you yet. And I know I keep saying the same thing, but it's really important for people to accept that. There was a question at the beginning that I don't think we ever got to or answered, but one of our viewers asked, is 9 and 8 a possibility, for this season? How good can they be this year? I just, I'm not going to cop out on it. I think once we get to Indiana in December, and once we have a better sense of who the best players are, which ones the Bears have a shot at. Did I say December or September?
Yeah, you said December. When you said Indiana,
I
figured everyone knew we were talking about the combine, which I believe starts March 1st.
Yeah, once we get there in December and get a much better look at these kids, once we have a chance to spend more time with our sources, with various NFL teams, once we get a better sense of who the Bears are signing in free agency, then we'll have a better handle on, what they can do in 1 year. But I can tell you, they're not going from 3-13 to 13-3, and a lot of that isn't just about the new players they bring in, but how much they can improve other players besides Justin Fields. And there's just so much work to do. And I'm anxious to get to spend whatever time I can and we can, with Ryan and Matt and everybody else in the next month or two, to get a better handle on what they think and what they feel. We heard a little bit of that today, but we just don't know yet. And we'll see who they take, who they sign, and where they make the biggest commitments, what positions, and then we'll start to get a better sense of what they can do.
Poles said today that the Bears had the most snaps by rookies by over 1,000. Now, I haven't fact-checked that, of course, but I'm willing to take his numbers at face value, and obviously that tells you that this was a very young Bears team, and I think we really saw that in December and into January. And for me, I'm willing to just let's just forget about what happened in December. Like, I am A-okay with that. I know Justin didn't look good. He wasn't with Darnell Mooney. They were banged up on the line. Chase Claypool even missed a couple of games. And look at the schedule. They're playing the Eagles. They're playing the Bills. They're playing the Vikings, the Lions, who weren't a playoff team, but we're pretty darn close. I'm willing to just call that a wash. I don't think I'm not going to read too much into that, especially with the guys they were trotting out there on defense. And I think when you look at back to kind of your original point, Kyle, there have been some really impressive throws from Justin. You can see you can understand why they would be excited about the potential. The throw you were referencing. Do you remember that throw to David Montgomery against the Falcons, where he was pointing him down the sideline? Yeah. And just it was absolutely perfect throw. Could not have been any better. His touchdown to Darnell Mooney against the Dolphins at Soldier Field. That was there's examples of really, really high level throws. Now, as Poles said, there's got to be some consistency. You can't just have a good throw here and there and expect that to be enough. But when you're talking about a young quarterback, a guy who really first year in the offense, that first year with Matt Nagy was not what you want for your rookie quarterback. And they were basically starting from scratch this year. I think he showed enough promise as a passer that you can certainly get behind that and get excited about what's potentially there for him.
Mr. Shorty had said, kind of in the same vein what we're talking about, or to continue this, said we are definitely better off than the end of Trubisky's second season. And I find that to be an interesting comment for multiple reasons. One, I do agree. What you've seen from Justin Fields in his second season was better than what you saw from Mitch Trubisky in his second season, even though Mitch made the Pro Bowl and the team went to the playoffs. But what I want to say there is there was a lot of, not to this level, which I think you're seeing with Justin Fields, but there was a significant amount of confidence that Mitch Trubisky was on the right track with Matt Nagy after that first season with that new coaching staff, and things pretty quickly went off the rails. And I'm in no way am I trying to say that's what's going to happen with Justin Fields, but I say that to demonstrate just how weird the NFL and QB development can be, Hub.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment, as far as the comparison to Trubisky. I don't know that it's really meaningful in any way, because the other side of that is that they also weren't a 3-14 football team at the end of Mr. Trubisky's second season. So, it's all on what you're trying to break down, in relation to what Sean was just saying. And I totally agree with what he just said about a few of the throws that Justin made. But I will also remind everybody of two throws that he made at the end of that last Packers game, which the Bears absolutely should have won, that those throws kept them from winning. I don't think they cost him the game, but they definitely kept him from winning. And they were bad throws and they shouldn't have been made. And there's a lot of reasons. He was playing hurt at that point. Again, we understand all this, but I think what we're hearing is a whole lot of fans who are saying, "Oh yeah, we get it. It's going to take time, but nonetheless, this is where we want to be right now." And the reason I keep telling you, you can't be there right now, And maybe the most important thing everybody needs to understand is forget Justin Fields for a minute. Forget, everybody on the field. Focus on Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. We don't know who they are right now. They just finished their first year, and we have to find out what they can do. There are some of those 16 rookies. There's a couple that really intrigue me. They may have already found a few guys who are going to be pretty good football players, and they have some other guys who, even though they're not rookies, still I think are developing into fairly good football players. They don't need a new 45-man roster, but they need a bunch more talent. And so, Trubisky and comparisons with that, it's all fun, I guess. And we can have that conversation, but it's also really very meaningless. Justin Fields has more talent than Matt Eberflus did. I think he's shown that.
Mitch Trubisky.
Trubisky.
Yeah, guys, this is why I'm not back to full time quite yet. But
we got you. Don't worry.
I know. Yeah. I just want people to be patient. That is, I think, what matters right now. Is all these fans understand what the Bears are trying to do, but they still want to go to the Super Bowl in the 23 season, and that can't happen. And we can't give you the evaluations that you want on some of these players because they're not developed yet. And Justin Fields is the most important one. And Justin Fields is the one who is deserving of and has to get the most patience, and also the most honest evaluation is don't write him off. I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong. And even though running quarterbacks have always struggled in the league, it doesn't mean that he can't be the guy. But what it does mean is you've got to give him the time to prove it. And don't overrate him with where he's at right now, because he still has a lot to learn.
I think that's a really good pivot point, Hub, and to kind of close out. We're going to spend about 15 more minutes with you guys before we get out of here. Before we do, and I go into that pivot, I do want to make sure I give a shout out to our sponsor before we get out of here. Marengo Guns, always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. Sean, my good buddy Mike B had something in here really early when we had that comment about 9-8, and he had responded to it, and I actually started so I could bring it up. But I think that is exactly what Hub was getting at here, Sean. And Mike says, I don't think we should be predicting wins, losses for the Bears, but rather what the expectation should be. And what Hub was kind of driving at there, I think, Hub, I apologize if I get this wrong, but what I believe you're driving at there is there's a lot we have to learn about this coaching staff and this front office staff. And I feel better after this first season with where Matt Eberflus is at. I still do have some questions with where Ryan Poles in this front office is moving towards, Sean.
Well, I think this is the start of where our true evaluation begins, is with this offseason. The entire last 12 months has been about tearing this thing down to the studs. And even though they wouldn't use the word rebuild, that's exactly what it is. And Ryan Poles is bringing Legos out to the media room and rebuilding without saying rebuilding. This is where the evaluation begins. This is where we begin to learn, what exactly his vision is for this team. He has all this cap space. He has 9 draft picks this year, including the number 1 overall pick. He was started a little bit behind the 8 ball because of how few draft picks they had when he was hired last year. And I think they made the most of that without their first round pick and trading down a couple of times to turn that into 10 or 11 picks, whatever it was. And there were some good finds in there. You're going to have good finds and you're going to have some duds in every draft. But this is where we're really going to learn like what these guys have. And you can say that about Ryan Poles. I think you can also say that about, as you were saying, Kyle, about the coaching staff. What did Luke Getsy learn from his first year as a coordinator? What can they take from what they did this year? And okay, they were trying to learn the strengths and weaknesses of Justin Fields. Okay, well, now you have a better idea. How do you adjust further? What can you do in this offense now? If you add a couple more weapons, how might this look different come next September from how it does now? And I don't know, it's going to be hard to really put a win-loss number on that until we really know what they do in the offseason. But I think you can have a measured expectations. I don't think you're looking for them to win 13 games next year, but certainly, closer to 500 is definitely a goal that you should have, and that you could. That's a realistic expectation for turning this team around. Now, we'll have to see exactly what they do because that's going to play a big part into what this team looks like.
Hub, when, kind of what I was getting at there, when you evaluate Ryan Poles after this first year, where are you at with the front office staff?
Well, it's a great question. I'm laughing because it's something else I was thinking as you asked the question. As far as I thought it was a very fair point that we shouldn't be trying to predict how many games they're going to win this year, but talking more about what's a realistic possibility. That is a good point. That's a better way to put it. Unfortunately, I still have a somewhat disappointing answer for it. We don't know who's on the roster. The only player who I can say with 100% certainty is going to be a Chicago Bear this year is Justin Fields. And even that may be risky. It's probably not, but I mean, what are we supposed to be basing any of this on? I will tell you that just looking at how many games were lost this year by one score, they weren't that far from 500 this year. If you think about it,
right.
that could easily be fixed quickly. And so, 8-9 wins certainly is a possibility if you do really well, and particularly having so many assets both in the draft and free agency, they could really improve this roster. But that improvement with all that new talent is only going to come if Justin Fields is the answer and takes the next step, and you have a quarterback who can win football games for you, because he couldn't do that this year. So, again, I just think that we got to, be excited about the assets they have to work with, hope that they get it right. And, my thoughts about Eberflus and Poles are, I don't know. I think it's a lot easier to evaluate Matt Eberflus than it is than Poles, because, much like what we're saying about Justin Fields, with all these players that Poles brought in, we don't know who they're going to be yet. We've seen some that we're intrigued by, some that we like. The injuries the second half of the season took a bunch of guys off the field who didn't get a chance to develop as rookies or second-year players. And so the quarterback trade looks bad right now. There's no other way to put it, but that doesn't mean it's going to end that way. Okay.
When you say quarter, I think you meant
I meant wide receiver. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Chase Claypool. Yeah,
I'm talking about Claypool. Claypool was a top receiver coming out of college, and a second round pick, and expected to be special, and still has that talent and that ability. But not only was he not able to do much with the Bears, the reason he was traded, he didn't do much with the team that drafted him either. And they were ready to get rid of him and get back that second round pick. And, the story, as we've been told, is that it came down to the Bears and the Packers. And the reason that they traded him to the Bears is they were confident that the Bears draft pick was going to be higher. I'm sure they didn't expect it to be the 23rd pick in the draft, but
33rd. Yeah. 33rd.
Oh, 33rd.
Yeah. You're talking about the first pick of the second round. Yeah.
But I think they felt that it was going to be at least what they gave up for him. And it turned out to be even more than that. And that's disconcerting, Now, that said, if he stays healthy, if he learns the system, he may still be the player that they thought he was going to be. And it may turn out to be a great trade. Again, there's nothing final on any of these guys yet. But, there is so much to fix that if we're talking about being competitors, that's unrealistic for this season. If we're talking about winning 8 or 9 games, there's every reason to believe that could be a possibility, just based on what they did this year and how close they came to it and where they fell short.
I'm chuckling at Robbie's comment here that his other lock for the team is punter Trenton Gill. I love that. You got a quarterback and a punter, so we're good.
Yeah, I think Hub may have been overstating when he was saying the only lock. I mean, there are some guys here, but Hub, I'll hit you there. It looked like you wanted to say something there.
Well, no, Kyle. I mean, obviously 20 or 30 of these guys are going to be back. That's the way the NFL works. My point was we don't know which 20 or 30, and we don't know how good they're going to be. I'm not suggesting that they're going to sign 45 new players. If that's not a given, I apologize, but it was certainly meant to be.
No, so you bring up Chase Claypool, Sean. I'll throw this to you. And see what your thoughts on it, because I'm on the same page with Hub. It complicates my feelings on Ryan Poles after the first year, was because I loved Chase Claypool coming out of college. I loved what I saw from him in that first year in Pittsburgh. And then the last 2 years, like, it hasn't. And I kind of chalked it up to some dysfunction with that offense and the issues that they've had at quarterback. But he came over And yeah, there were the injuries issues. He had to learn had to learn the playbook. But my good friend Mike B, when I was talking about this type of stuff with him, he had a good point. It was like it might not have been the first game that Chase Claypool was active. It might have been the second game, but like it was like the second game he had 6 targets, and it might have been the high for him. So like we can talk, they can say that it was a playbook, but like if you were giving him 6 targets the second weekend, so I do think there should be some concern with Chase Claypool. I still love the player. But when you look at the way it went and that context, that's another thing where you go, well, if that doesn't work out, are we a little bit more worried about Ryan Poles?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's reasons for concern with the way that the season ended for Claypool, and part of that was because he missed some time with the knee injury, and obviously he wasn't going to do much in that last game with the quarterbacks they were trotting out there. But I think a full off season in lockstep with Justin Fields is going to be huge for him. We saw like kind of what that did for Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney and their connection, and I think we can see a similar cohesiveness sort of grow over the course of the offseason. And you're right. I mean, Kyle, you mentioned that you were disappointed in his second season in Pittsburgh. I mean, statistically, you look at the numbers. I know the touchdowns weren't there, but you're talking about a guy who caught 100 passes for 800 yards. I mean, if Chase Claypool, he's done that twice in his career. If he did that next year for the Bears, I think most Bears fans would be happy, wouldn't they?
So when I say that, what I mean is for his arc, like particularly coming out of college where I thought he was, then the rookie year that he had, he was okay.
You thought there was going to be that uphill trajectory.
There was not. And like I said, part of it was because Ben could not get the ball down the field.
That was a big part of it.
That was a big, but it continued this year as well. I mean, when you're talking about Pickett and Mitch Trubisky, I get it. And they had terrible issues on the offensive line. But yeah, they're just the explosive plays that what would take Chase Claypool from maybe, a guy essentially, an average to slightly above average receiver that might be your number 2 receiver or maybe a 1B at top. I thought he was on track to be a top receiver, like that bona fide number 1 guy. Maybe not a top 5 or top 10 guy, but a guy that you felt really confident in. And it hasn't gone that way. And there's been it's a large enough sample size now that I do worry about it. And I'm going to kind of change it here and throw this back over to Hub. In general, when we look back at Ryan Poles' first season, I look at the draft, the draft choices that he had. I don't always agree with the way he approached the draft, but I think you got some pretty decent players out of it. I was always pretty discouraged with the way he approached free agency. And you look at the team, they didn't sign a lot of long-term deals, Hub. And we know why, but I just felt like there wasn't a lot at the pro level, the pro scouting level, that you can look at and get an idea of where he really where Ryan Poles can separate himself to show that he's, that type of GM.
Again, you don't do it in 1 year. And I mean, I like Pritzker a lot, the kid whose name I'm forgetting now, but the undrafted free agent linebacker, I think is going to be a very good inside linebacker.
Jack Sanborn?
Yeah, Sanborn. There's just the 2 names that pop up, and there's probably half a dozen kids that I think showed enough that I can feel good about them being starters for the Chicago Bears and possibly very good football players. So I don't think he had a terrible first year. And we have to remember he didn't have a first-round draft choice, and that makes things very hard. And to be honest with you, one of the things that I kind of like about him is that he knew when he gave up that second-round pick for Claypool that he was giving up what was going to be a worst case top 7, top 8 in that round pick. And so he knew he was paying dearly for him. So he obviously felt good and showed the stones to go ahead and do it. And I think there's one other thing that is very real that I haven't heard anybody talk about, and everybody has been disappointed in the lack of production from Chase Claypool, is that we don't know if everybody has given Justin Fields a pass, saying part of his problem is his wide receivers. Maybe part of Chase Claypool's problem was Justin Fields, because he has not shown himself to be a great passer yet. And so, I don't think either one of them should be written off or is to blame for the other one's issues. But that ship sails both ways, and I don't know that Claypool, showing up, not knowing the offense, playing with the injuries, and having a quarterback who wasn't ready yet, we can't really evaluate him either. So my concern about Claypool is more what he didn't do in Pittsburgh than what he did in the time he was here. But we'll see. And I think if he turns out to be what most of us thought he was going to be a couple of years ago, suddenly you're not nearly in as bad a shape at the receiver position as you think you are. And minimally, we know he's going to have a year to learn the offense, and he's going to start the season healthy. And then, by week 3, week 4, week 5, hopefully we have a better feeling about it.
All right, we're getting here at an hour. We got to get going. Sean, anything else you want to hit on quickly?
No, I mean, other than just to piggyback off what Hub was saying there is, I feel like that's this offseason will be huge for those two, for Justin and for Chase Claypool to get on that same page. And we can't really, I agree that we can't really judge that connection until we see a few games in the next season. Other stuff from polls. I mean, we've kind of hit on most of the important topics from today. I think they know that they have to make some changes on that offensive line. They didn't really get into specifics other than saying that Tevin Jenkins did a good job switching to that right guard spot. I think Ryan Poles was really impressed with the way that Jenkins approached that and took on that responsibility. Otherwise, no, I think we pretty much touched on most of the big stuff.
All right. Well, a couple of things before we wrap up. Make sure you go to shawlocal.com and find all of our content there. The season is over, but that does not mean our coverage stopped. We got a lot of stuff already in the works. Sean and I started the planning for the offseason, our offseason projects. It's going to be a fun time. Make sure you follow us at Bears_Insider. If you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, get yourself notifications so you know when we go live. Everyone that does that, and also leave a comment. I do look at the comments and try and at least give a thumbs up or reply. Everything like that helps people find the show. It helps us grow this channel. And we really appreciate everyone who joined in today. And Hub, I got a couple comments that came in during the show that I wanted to end with for you here. The first was our good guy, a good friend of yours, Mark Potash, checking in with, it's so great to disagree with you again, Hub. Welcome back.
Yeah, I've missed Potsy. It's always good to have it back.
and then the final one was from Auger. And, he said, Hub, you've literally been the voice of reason for me going on 30 plus years when it comes to the Bears. It's truly appreciated. And, that's how I always describe you, Hub, to other people too, is you're not going to get the hot takes. You are going to get Hub you're going to get Hub's honest opinion. And sometimes you'll say something or we'll have a disagreement. I'll be like, oh, Hub. But I love the fact that I know you are giving your honest opinion on things. And it's great to have you back here, man.
Well, guys, it's great to be back. And I apologize for the problems with the audio. That's on me. We'll have that fixed by next week. I will have that fixed by next week. Again, I just can't thank everybody enough for how kind you've been. And fortunately, things seem to be working out. And I'm just really excited to get back at it. Can't wait to be in Indiana at the draft. And I don't want to. I do actually want to sell. That's part of my job. One thing I can promise you is that we have always provided the best draft coverage available to anybody outside of the 32 NFL teams, and we will be again this year. We're already getting started, if for no other reason but the excitement of this draft with the Bears having the first overall pick. It's a time when you don't want to miss another one of our live feeds or anything that we're going to be putting in the paper. It's going to be a little while before we really dig in and get started, because we're trying to learn more and get it right for you before we go too far. But it's always been part of my favorite part of the season, partially because we started doing it before anybody else 45 years ago. And we're going to do it for you again this year, and hopefully for a long time to come. And maybe this is where I'd like to finish, guys, is that in some respects, I guess I've been a part of the Bears family for 45 years now. And so I've always known about the people and how special they are. But it's a great organization. It's not necessarily a winning organization. It hasn't been for a while. And I can assure you nobody is less happy about that than the McCaskies and all the people that work for them. But what I can tell you already is that they have good people in Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus and a lot of these players. And some of them have already shown enough talent to know that they're going to be good players. It's going to be better in 23, and how much better it can get. That's what we're going to be trying to tell you for the next couple months. And I can't wait until the season starts again. I know it's still early in the year, but before we know it, it'll be back. It'll be a better team, and hopefully it'll be a more enjoyable year for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone who joined us. As you can tell, there's going to be a lot to talk about this Bears offseason, so make sure you stick with us here. We're going to be back live. We'll figure out a day, and I'll try and throw that up on Twitter for you. Until then, though, thank you, everyone who joined us this afternoon at a time that we're not usually at, and it's great to see all the regulars and a lot of new faces in here. We really appreciate it. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, everyone stay safe. Have a good weekend. Not even, what week day is it? Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is anymore. God. Anyway, have a good week. How about that? Have a good week. We'll talk to you down the road, guys.